Intellectual Disabilities by Deirdre, Barbara, and Leah. Key words relate to intellectual disabilities. An intellectual disability is a disability characterized by significant limitations, both in intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior as expressed in conceptual, social, and practical adaptive skills. Least restrictive environment, also known as LRE, is the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Improvement Act, which ensures a free and appropriate education by requiring students with disabilities to be placed in the general education classroom to the maximum extent appropriate. Family, Educational Rights, and Privacy Act. The student's record must be kept confidential. Only school personnel with a legitimate educational interest may obtain a student's record without written consent from a parent. Mainstreaming. Students with special needs are placed with non-disabled peers when appropriate. Inclusion. Integrating all students within the general education classroom, even those with severe disabilities. Common characteristics of learners with intellectual disabilities include having trouble speaking, finding it hard to remember things, not being able to understand how things work, having trouble thinking logically, having trouble solving problems, low achievement in academic areas, and deficits in adaptive behavior.
There are key challenges that face children with intellectual disabilities within and outside of the classroom. Challenges within the classroom. Communication affects the child's way of sending and receiving verbal and nonverbal commands, such as following directions, completing tasks, learning new procedures, remembering multi-step directions, and illegible handwriting. Interpersonal skills affect the child's ability to interact with others. This includes classroom teachers, specialty teachers, and fellow students. Examples of interpersonal skills are inappropriate language, getting frustrated easily, mood shifts, and withdrawal from group or partner activities. Cognition is also a difficulty. It is the ability to problem solve, reason, and perceive. Examples of cognition issues: lack of focus or motivation, inability to comprehend information, disorganization. Self-direction is also difficult. It is the child's ability to think and plan for his or herself. Examples of self-direction issues: they cannot complete or follow through with assignments or need a purpose for shifting activities. There are also challenges outside of the classroom. Bullying is the main one. Bullying is more likely to happen to children with intellectual disabilities because they are less likely to defend themselves, and they already lack high self-esteem and therefore do not believe they can defend themselves. Some statistics of bullying: 60% of students with intellectual disabilities are bullied compared to only 25% of general students who are not diagnosed with intellectual disabilities. There are key challenges that also face teachers in schools who have children in their classrooms or schools that have intellectual disabilities. Schools need to create an individual education plan, or an IEP. The team that includes creating the IEP is a school district psychologist, guidance counselor, the principal, the classroom teacher, a special teacher such as speech or ESL, and the parent of the child. The IEP lists the special support the child might need for him or her to succeed in the classroom. This includes the TSS, or the therapeutic staff support, an aid, adaptations to instructions, physical or speech therapy. Schools must also create equal amounts of extracurricular activities for those who have intellectual disabilities. They also must create a learning environment that supports each child. Teachers may also need to adapt their teaching strategies in order to fulfill the IEP requirements. These might include group learning activities, which is the most effective strategy. Children will motivate each other to succeed at the task at hand. When the child with the intellectual disability sees what the other children in the group are doing, they are likely to follow what the other children are doing, which leads to them completing the task successfully. Also, the IEP may include hands-on learning. Children with intellectual disabilities learn better kinesthetically. For example, making shapes and letters out of Play-Doh or something they can physically touch and feel will allow them to recognize by touch the difference between the shapes and letters. Also, taking baby steps is key. Children with intellectual disabilities learn better through breaking down steps into simpler tasks. Each task should be broken down in a way the child can understand and comprehend what they are being taught.
There are key instructional strategies commonly used to address the challenges. Teachers use these strategies to help maximize learning opportunities for children with intellectual disabilities. Teach using direct instruction, step-by-step teaching, guided and/or independent practice, providing clear feedback, being very effective, and it also helps with basic skills. Focus on overlearning and practice a skill until the point of mastery. Extensive repetition and practice skills. This is done because many times children with disabilities have difficulty storing information into long-term memory. Encourage hands-on learning. Good strategy for learning because many times disabled children have problems with abstract thinking and need many examples given to them. This way, the children are touching, seeing, and hearing about what the subject matter may be. Real-life situations should also be put into play with hands-on learning. It gives the children a sense of how it relates to life. This also will encourage them to engage more into the topic at hand. Use cooperative learning when applicable. Children disabled and mainstream should work together in groups to achieve a goal. Key advantages in working together are building the child's self-esteem, learning to work together with peers in a positive manner, achieve the goal by working together by using team building skills. Lastly, foster generalization. Provide immediate feedback following the performance of the skill. Practice the skill several times until mastery. Provide reinforcement for demonstrating the skill. Reteach the same skill in a different context, and this will gradually increase the range of contexts in which the students practice the new information. Also, lastly, require students to decide what particular skill or strategy could be used to solve a problem. The first case study we researched was Self-Concept of Children with Intellectual Disability in Mainstream Settings. Self-concept is extremely important when it comes to educational outcomes. In the research, a total of 17 children with intellectual disabilities were assessed and compared to work measures and social statuses in mainstream classrooms. The Pictorial Scale of Perceived Competence and Social Acceptance, PSP-CSA, for young children is what the conductors used to assess the children. The PSP-CSA was compared with independently rated work samples and social status measures. Acceptance and competence was measured with the other populations for people with or without the disability. The results of this case study was perceived competence and acceptance were positive. The children with cognitive competence were not existent with ratings of samples, but peer acceptance was more consistent with ratings. Conclusion of the study. Children with intellectual disabilities were positive in their self-concept when it is usually negative. The second case study we covered was curricular modifications for elementary students with learning disabilities in high, average, and low IQ scores. Students with intellectual disabilities are known to be most at risk for not being served in schools. The research they used were the delivery formats they give to children with intellectual disabilities are also using the Individual Education Plan, IEP. When doing research, they give the formats, accommodations, and modifications that they give them if the child is high, average, or low in IQ. The results. The children with high intellectual ability differed from those who had low and average ability. They then concluded saying that after the research concurred, they realized this may not have been the appropriate educational approach for this group of children.
In conclusion, children with intellectual disabilities can have trouble speaking, remembering events, thinking logically, and solving problems. Self-concept is extremely important when it comes to educational outcomes. Students with intellectual disabilities are known to be at most risk for students not being served in schools. Children with intellectual disabilities face many challenges in school, such as skills of which include writing, studying, math, vocabulary, and comprehension. Outside the classroom, they face problems and challenges such as sports or extracurricular activities. Schools face challenges as well when dealing with students who are diagnosed with intellectual disabilities. Schools create a team of support for the child so the child is capable of succeeding as mainstream children. It is the teacher's job to adapt to the needs of everyone in his or her classroom. Strategies for teachers who have a child in their classroom that is diagnosed with an intellectual disability include clear feedback and many other methods. An essential learning aspect in the classroom is to encourage hands-on learning. Lastly, also foster generalization, provide feedback, practice skills until mastery, reinforce the student, and reteach the same skill until into different contexts.